I remember the sound before anything else, a soft click, like a secret being released after years of silence. That's when I turned around and saw my daughter, Maya, standing by the old wooden box. The same box that had sat on my mother's dresser for 30 years. The one she told me never to open, not until the right time. But my mother never told me what that time was. Now here I was, 60 years old, standing in the same house I grew up in, and watching my daughter break the one rule my mother had begged me to keep. Mom, Maya said softly, her fingers trembling as she lifted the lid. I didn't mean to, it opened. I wanted to scream, to stop her, but I froze. It was like my mother's voice whispered through the air. Let it happen. Inside the box, there was no gold, no jewelry, no letter. Just a small, folded piece of white linen, stained at the edges, wrapped around something heavy. Maya reached in. Her eyes widened. Mom, what is this? I didn't answer, because I didn't know. I had lived my entire life wondering what my mother kept inside that box. Through her sickness, through her last breath when she grabbed my hand and said, "Promise me, Emma, don't ever open it." And I had promised, but now someone else had opened it for me. Maya placed the wrapped object in my hands. It felt cold, heavier than it should have been. My heart began to race, my fingers trembling. I unwrapped the linen, and when I saw what was inside, a shiver ran down my spine. It wasn't money. It wasn't a keepsake. It was a key. An old, rusted key with a small tag tied to it. The tag read only one word: forgive. And in that moment, for the first time since my mother's death, I realized she wasn't protecting me from something in the box. She was protecting me from what that key was meant to unlock. The key felt warm now, as if it had been waiting for my hands all these years. Its metal was rough, edges chipped with time, yet there was something almost alive about it. I turned it over again and again, staring at the small paper tag tied with an old thread. One word: forgive. Forgive who? My mother? Myself? The air inside the house felt heavier that morning. Dust floated like tiny ghosts, and every creak of the wooden floor sounded like someone whispering behind me. I hadn't been in this room since my mother's funeral. She'd left everything just the way it was. The books stacked by her bedside, her reading glasses still on the nightstand, the faint smell of lavender and old perfume still clinging to the curtains. I sat down on her bed and held the key tighter. For a moment, I could almost hear her voice again, calm, gentle, but firm. Emma, not yet. But yet had come and gone. Now there was no one left to stop me. I looked around the room, searching for something, anything, that the key might fit. Drawers, cabinets, even the small wooden chest at the end of the bed. Nothing. Then my eyes caught something strange, a small frame on the wall, slightly tilted. Behind it, the wallpaper had peeled away, revealing the outline of a small door, barely the size of my hand. A door I'd never noticed before. My heart skipped. I reached out, touched it, cold to the skin, hidden in plain sight for decades. Could this be it? The key fit perfectly. It turned with a soft click. A smell of dust and time spilled out. Inside was a small envelope, yellowed with age. My mother's handwriting covered the front. To Emma, when you're ready to understand. I sat there, frozen. Ready? I whispered. Was I ever ready for this? My hands trembled as I held the envelope. Part of me wanted to tear it open right there, but another part, the same part that still feared my mother's voice, whispered, "Not alone." So I placed the envelope back in the small hidden space, closed the tiny door, and locked it again. For now. Because if I'd learned anything from my mother, it was that forgiveness never comes without a price. That night, I couldn't sleep. The key lay on the nightstand beside me, gleaming faintly in the moonlight, as if it was watching me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's face, not smiling, not angry, just waiting. I tried to convince myself that it was nothing, an old letter, a family memory, maybe something sentimental. But deep down, I knew my mother too well. She never did anything simple. In the next room, Maya was still awake. I could hear her walking, the creak of the floor under her bare feet. She'd been quiet since the morning, ever since she opened that box. I knew she was curious. Curiosity runs in the blood of the women in my family, and sometimes it ruins us. "Maya," I said softly, knocking on her door. She didn't answer. When I peeked in, she was lying on the bed, her eyes closed, pretending to sleep. I smiled sadly, turned off the light, and went back to my room. But I should have known. When I woke up, it was 2:47 a.m. The house was silent. Too silent. The key was gone. I sat up, my heart pounding. I walked down the hallway, barefoot, every shadow feeling alive. The air felt colder, heavier, like the house itself was holding its breath. Then I saw it, a faint light under the door of my mother's old room. I pushed the door open, slowly. Maya was sitting on the floor, the tiny wall door wide open, the envelope in her hands, tears on her cheeks. "Maya, what did you do?" I whispered. She looked up at me, eyes red, terrified, but somehow older, as if she'd just learned something no one should ever know. "I'm sorry, Mom," she said. "I had to. She wrote about you." I froze. About me? Maya nodded slowly and handed me the letter. The paper trembled between her fingers as I took it. It was thin, delicate, but the words inside felt heavy, like the weight of years pressing down. The first line read, "Emma, my sweet girl, if you're reading this, it means the truth has finally found you." And just below that, a sentence that made my hands shake, my knees weak. "You are not the daughter I lost. You are the daughter I kept." I felt the room spin. Maya's voice was distant now. "Mom, what does that mean?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. But one thing was certain, my mother had kept more than one secret, and this one had just rewritten everything I thought I knew about who I was. The morning light felt strange that day, soft but heavy. I sat at the kitchen table, the letter still trembling in my hands. Maya watched me in silence, afraid to speak. Her eyes were red from crying, but I knew it wasn't just fear. It was confusion, the same kind that was tearing me apart inside. "You are not the daughter I lost. You are the daughter I kept." Those words wouldn't stop echoing in my head. My mother had always spoken about a loss, a tragedy she never wanted to discuss. I thought she meant my father, but what if she hadn't? I needed answers. So I went through her old phone book, the one she kept in the kitchen drawer next to the faded recipes and half-broken pens. Most of the names meant nothing to me, until I saw one. Clara Henderson. The name was underlined twice in red ink, and beside it, my mother had written, "Knows everything." My heart skipped a beat. It took me almost 2 hours to find Clara's address. She still lived in the same small town where I'd grown up, just a few streets away from my childhood home. I didn't call first. I didn't want to give her time to prepare. When she opened the door, her eyes widened. For a moment, she just stared. Then she whispered, "You look just like her." "My mother?" I asked. She nodded slowly and stepped aside. "Come in." Her house smelled like tea and old books. The walls were covered with photographs, some black and white, some recent, but all filled with faces I didn't recognize. Except one. A young woman, my mother, holding a baby. "That's me," I said, pointing. Clara's lips tightened. "Yes, and no." "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath, sat down, and poured tea into 2 chipped cups. "Your mother was my closest friend, but there are things she couldn't tell you, things she promised never to reveal." I leaned forward. "Then tell me, please." Clara looked down at her hands, her voice trembling. "Emma, when you were born, there were 2 babies." The room went silent. I felt my breath catch. "2?" She nodded. "Twins, but one was taken away. Your mother said it was for your safety. I never knew why. I only know she regretted it every day until she died." I gripped the edge of the table, my hands shaking. Maya's face flashed in my mind, her eyes, her voice, the way she looked so much like me. My chest tightened. "Clara," I whispered, "do you know what happened to the other baby?" Clara hesitated, her eyes glistening. "She didn't tell me much, only that the other child stayed closer than you think." I drove home in silence. The sun was setting behind the trees, and every ray of light seemed to pierce through my chest. 2 babies, twins, and one of them was taken. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. I could still hear Clara's voice. "The other child stayed closer than you think." What did that mean? Was she trying to warn me or comfort me? When I got home, Maya was waiting by the window. She ran to the door as soon as I entered. "Mom, where have you been? I was worried." Her voice was soft, innocent, but for the first time in my life, I didn't know how to look at her. "Maya," I said quietly, "do you ever feel like you don't belong here?" She frowned. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," I lied. "Forget it." She watched me carefully. "You're scaring me, Mom." I smiled, or at least tried to. "I'm just tired." But inside, my thoughts were spinning faster than ever. Her eyes, they were my mother's eyes. The same shape, the same color, the same sadness hiding behind them. And then I remembered something. The day she was born. The nurse had looked at me strangely when they brought her to me. I'd been too exhausted to notice, too overwhelmed by the loss of my husband. But what if? What if Maya wasn't mine the way I thought she was? That night, I couldn't sleep again. The letter, the key, Clara's words, they all danced in the darkness like ghosts. At 3 a.m., I got up and opened my mother's box again. There was still something under the velvet lining. I pulled it out carefully. A small, folded photograph. 2 newborns wrapped in identical blankets. One had a mark on her shoulder, a tiny birthmark shaped like a crescent moon. My hands went cold. Maya had that same mark. I stumbled back, my breath short, the room spinning. "No," I whispered. "It can't be." Just then, the floor creaked behind me. Maya stood in the doorway, pale, her eyes wet with tears. "You found it," she said quietly. I froze. "Maya, what is this?" She took a step closer. "I didn't mean for you to find out this way." My voice cracked. "Find out what, Maya?" She swallowed hard, trembling. "I wasn't supposed to know either, but Grandma left me a letter too, the day she died." I stared at her, my heart pounding. What did it say? Her lips trembled as she whispered. "She said I wasn't your granddaughter. I was your sister." For a long time, we just stood there, me and Maya, staring at each other in the half-dark room. The photo trembled in my hand, the air heavy between us. My own heartbeat was so loud, I could barely hear her breathing. "You're lying," I whispered. "That's not possible." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "I wish I was." I shook my head, backing away. "No, I raised you. I fed you. I held you when you cried. You called me Mom." "And you always will be," she said softly. "You are my mother, even if—" her voice cracked, "even if we share the same blood in a different way." Her words sliced through me like glass. It didn't make sense. None of it did. How could I be her sister when I taught her how to walk, how to read, how to dream? I turned away, my throat tight. "She lied to both of us," I said. "Your grandmother, my mother, she lied." "She was protecting us," Maya said quietly. "That's what her letter said. She couldn't raise two babies. She thought it was safer this way." I laughed bitterly. "Safer? You think growing up in a lie is safer?" Maya wiped her eyes. "I think she loved us the only way she knew how." I sank into the chair, my hands covering my face. Everything I believed about my life, every memory, every feeling, was shifting beneath me like sand. For 60 years, I thought I understood love. But love built on lies feels like a house without a foundation. "I don't know who I am anymore," I said quietly. Maya knelt beside me. "You're Emma. You're the woman who raised me, the one who made me strong enough to face this." I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't see my daughter. I saw my mother, her softness, her fear, her mistakes, living again in Maya's face. Tears blurred my vision. All those years, I'd blamed my mother for being distant, secretive, broken. Now I understood. She'd been carrying the weight of this truth alone. And now, that weight was mine. Maya whispered, "Please don't hate her, or me." I took her hand. It was warm, shaking, familiar. "I could never hate you," I said, "but I don't know how to forgive yet." That night, after Maya fell asleep, I sat by the window watching the rain. The old house creaked like it was whispering her name, my mother's name. She was gone, but her secrets were alive in these walls, in me, in Maya. I picked up the letter one more time. The last line I hadn't noticed before caught my eye, faded, almost erased. The key will open more than a door. It will open what was lost between you. I didn't understand it then, but I would, soon. The next morning, the rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray, the kind of gray that feels like it remembers every storm. I hadn't slept. I couldn't. My mother's letter still echoed in my mind. The key will open more than a door. I held the small brass key in my hand, running my thumb over the word engraved on it. Forgive. It was warm, almost alive. I knew what I had to do. Maya, I said, standing in the doorway, we're going back. She looked up, startled. Back where? To her house, to where it all began. The road to my mother's old home was longer than I remembered. The trees seemed taller, darker. The air was thick with memories. When we arrived, the house looked smaller, fragile, as if time itself had been slowly erasing it. I hadn't been here in over 20 years. The windows were boarded up, the porch steps cracked, the paint peeling. Yet, as soon as I stepped inside, the smell hit me. Lavender and dust. My mother's scent. Still there, still haunting. Maya walked beside me, holding a flashlight. Where do we even start? I didn't answer. I just followed the feeling, that quiet pull inside my chest, guiding me down the narrow hallway toward her old study. The same room where I used to sit and listen to her type late at night. The same room that had been locked the day she died. The key trembled slightly in my hand, as if it recognized the door before I did. The lock clicked open with a sound I'll never forget, a slow, heavy sigh. Inside, everything was frozen in time. Her desk, her chair, her books. And on the wall, a photograph I'd never seen before. It was my mother, holding two little girls. One was me. The other, Maya. But the date on the photo was impossible. It was taken 10 years before Maya was born. Maya stared at it, her voice shaking. That can't be real. I walked closer, my heart pounding. There, in the corner of the room, stood a small wooden chest, carved with the same pattern as the first box. The twin to the box that started everything. I knelt down, slid the key into the lock. It fit perfectly. When I turned it, a faint click echoed through the quiet house. Inside, there was another envelope, yellowed but sealed tight. My name was written across it, in my mother's handwriting. But below it, there was something else. To be opened together. I looked at Maya. Her eyes were wide, afraid. But she nodded. We opened it. Inside was a letter and a birth certificate. Two names. Emma Grace Williams. Maya Grace Williams. Twins, born the same day. But under Mother's name, there wasn't just one signature. There were two. My mother's, and another woman's I'd never seen before. Clara Henderson. I couldn't breathe when I saw Clara's name on that birth certificate. All this time, I thought she was just my mother's friend, the woman who knew everything. Now I realized she hadn't just known the truth, she'd lived it. I drove straight to her house. Maya sat beside me in silence, clutching the letter. Neither of us spoke. There were no words big enough for what we were about to face. When Clara opened the door, she didn't look surprised. She looked ready, as if she had been waiting for this day her whole life. "Emma," she said softly, "I was wondering when you'd come." I stepped inside. The house felt smaller now, the air thick with the weight of everything unsaid. I placed the letter on her table. "You signed it," I said. My voice was trembling, but not from fear, from betrayal. "You signed my birth certificate." She nodded slowly. "Yes." Maya's voice cracked. "Why? Who are you to us?" Clara closed her eyes for a moment. "I'm your mother, too." The room fell silent. I stared at her, unable to move. "No, my mother was Evelyn. You were just—" Her tears cut me off. "I was her sister, Emma, your aunt. But when you were born, Evelyn wasn't supposed to live." She sat down, her voice shaking, memories spilling out like broken glass. "Your mother had complications during birth. The doctors said she might not make it, and both babies were too weak. I couldn't have children of my own. So she made me promise, if anything happened to her, I would take one of you and raise her as my own. But Evelyn survived, and by then, we had already split you apart." I felt my chest tighten. "You took Maya." Clara nodded, sobbing quietly. "She was dying, Emma. The hospital said she wouldn't last a day. Evelyn thought keeping one of you hidden would give her peace. But she couldn't live with that secret. So, years later, she brought Maya back, as your daughter. She thought it was the only way to keep both of you safe and together." I sank into the chair, my head spinning. Safe from what? Clara looked down. "From your father's family. They wanted one heir, not two. They wanted to choose who would inherit, who would matter. Evelyn wouldn't let them decide that, so she made her own choice." The truth hit me like a wave. All those years of distance, of silence, of pain, they weren't punishment. They were protection. "She carried that secret to her grave," Clara whispered, "and she begged me to do the same, until you were ready." Maya reached for my hand. Her touch was warm, trembling. "So, all of this, the letters, the boxes, the key?" "They were her way," Clara said, smiling through tears, "of making sure you'd find your way back to each other." I looked at Clara, this woman who had loved us enough to lie, enough to suffer in silence. I saw the same exhaustion my mother once carried. And for the first time since this all began, I felt something heavier than pain. The next morning, the world felt different. Quiet. Almost too quiet. The storm had passed, but something still hung in the air, the kind of silence that only comes after you've broken something you can never fix. I sat on the porch, the letter in my lap. The same letter that once tore my world apart now felt like a bridge. Every word my mother had written was still painful, but no longer unbearable. Maya came outside and sat beside me. For a long time, neither of us said a word. The wind moved through the trees, carrying the smell of wet earth and old memories. Finally, I spoke. "When I first read her letter, I hated her," I said softly. "I thought she'd stolen my life, that she'd turned everything into a lie. But now, I think she just didn't know any other way to love us." Maya nodded slowly. "I think she wanted to keep us safe, even from the truth." I looked at her, and for the first time, I saw not a daughter, not a sister, but both. Two lives tied together by one woman's impossible choice. "I don't know how to forgive her," I whispered, "or you, or even myself." Maya took my hand. Then don't rush it. Forgiveness isn't a door you walk through, Mom. It's a room you build, piece by piece. Her words hit deep. That was the thing about Maya. She always carried wisdom beyond her years. Maybe it wasn't just from me. Maybe it was from all the women who came before us. Later that evening, I went back into the study, my mother's room. The air still smelled of lavender and thyme. The open chest sat quietly in the corner, as if waiting. I picked up the small brass key, Forgive. It gleamed softly in the fading light. I realized something then. The key had never been meant for the box. It was for me, for my heart, for the locked places inside me that I had sealed shut long ago. I closed my eyes and whispered, I forgive you, Mom, for lying, for hiding, for loving me the only way you knew how. And in that moment, something inside me let go. The anger, the confusion, the loneliness. It all slipped away, like a weight I didn't know I'd been carrying. When I opened my eyes, Maya was standing in the doorway, tears on her cheeks, a soft smile. You did it, she whispered. I nodded. No, I said, smiling faintly. We did. We stood there, hand in hand, the past finally behind us, and for the first time in decades, the house didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt at peace. A week later, the rain finally stopped. The world smelled new, like forgiveness had washed it clean. I packed a small bag, the box, and the key. Maya watched me quietly, her eyes full of unspoken questions. Where are we going? She asked. I smiled faintly, to finish what she started. The drive took us 3 hours, through winding roads and silent hills. Somewhere deep in the countryside, we reached a small cemetery surrounded by oak trees. The air was still, soft, like it knew we were coming. My mother's grave was easy to find. I'd only been here once before, the day we buried her. Back then, I came with anger. This time, I came with love. I knelt down, brushing the leaves from her name. Evelyn Grace Williams, it read. Mother, sister, protector. For a long time, I just sat there in silence, feeling the earth beneath my hands. Then, I opened the box one last time. Inside, wrapped in a piece of silk, was a small silver locket, shaped like a heart, cracked down the middle. One side held a photo of her holding 2 newborns. The other side was empty. Maya leaned closer. It's broken. No, I said softly. It's waiting. I took a deep breath, pulled a small photo from my pocket, the one we'd taken just yesterday. Me and Maya. Mother and daughter. Sisters. Whole again. I placed the photo inside the empty half and closed the locket. Then I buried the box beside her grave. For a long time, neither of us moved. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying whispers that sounded like her voice. Are you okay, Mom? Maya asked. I smiled through the tears. Yes, for the first time in my life, I think I am. We stood there, hand in hand, as the sun broke through the clouds. Light poured over the grave, golden and gentle. And I swear, in that moment, I felt her, not as a ghost, not as a memory, but as peace. Her love wasn't gone. It had simply changed form, passed from her hands to mine, and now to Maya's. As we walked away, I looked back one last time. The light shimmered on the grave, and the wind carried a single word through the air. Or maybe it was just my heart that heard it. Forgive.